And we're back. What's up? Get tuned in here. Number two. How you guys doing? Welcome back for a second video this year. It's been good. What's been going on? We've got a good bit to talk about today. It's almost like the news cycle from 2021 is back in vogue. People are talking about Bitcoin mining centralization and censorship. Unrealized capital gains taxes are back on the Hill. Senator Ron Wyden from, I believe, Wyoming is introducing a bill. The Billionaires minimum income tax is back. And that's something that we talked about 2 years ago, I want to say, back when that was a popular topic. And I've said since day one on this channel, literally, you can go check out the first video. Unrealized capital gains tax is going to play a factor in crypto and in the tax landscape at some point. I truly do believe that. And what's his name? Nomad Capitalist has been saying that longer than I have. He's been saying unrealized capital gains taxes really is a risk, as ludicrous as it sounds. And first, they're going to go after the billionaires, obviously, because they're the easy scapegoats for any just egregiously immoral tax code to be enacted on. And then it's just going to move its way back down to the rest of us. And that's just kind of how it's been with every other tax. The income tax was initially for the one percenters, and then it moved its way back down for everybody. And other taxes have been the same way. And they already have wealth taxes in other parts of the world. Businesses in the United States have to pay, in some counties, personal property taxes. And I'm not going to go into what that is, but in a way, it's kind of like a wealth tax on businesses that own business assets and use business assets. They tax the value of those assets. And it's the same thing with property tax for your house. You have a house, it goes up in value. That means you're paying more in property tax because the assessed value is that much more, and the tax is based on that assessed value. So you could be seeing unrealized capital gains taxes move in here, and that could have implications for cryptocurrency. And by the time they pass something like that, should it come down the pike, and I really do believe it's an if and not a when, then what's going to happen is KYC is going to be so embroiled in the crypto landscape, and the off-ramps are going to be so constricted, and the legislation is going to be so tight by that point and established that it'll be that much more easy to implement. And people who have crypto assets and people who have their tax IDs tied to those crypto assets, they're going to know where your money is. And and this is what the Bitcoin bros don't get. And this is what a lot of people in crypto don't get in general. It's not just the Bitcoin bros. When it comes to tax, you're actually guilty until proven innocent. If they think that you have money in assets, they send you a tax bill, and it's up to you to prove that you actually don't have those assets, and it's up to you to report, what is actually the case. And I've actually interacted with certain people where they got a personal property tax bill from the state, specifically the county, and it said, hey, you owe this amount of money in personal property tax because we believe that you have this amount in assets. Now, this person was selling their business, and they had, I think, like $150 in inventory. They didn't really have any supplies to speak of, and the county sent them an assessment that said they had $200,000 in assets. That's what their assessment was based on their NAISC code. And if you don't know what that is, basically that's a code that identifies what industry you're in, and it allows taxing authorities to compare your information to other companies in that industry, and then they compare ratios and stuff like that. It's another form of tax analysis that tax authorities do. And if you didn't know about that, yeah, they're into that. And so they sent this guy a bill for like $2,000. And the guy's like, I don't even have any of these assets. And it was up to him to essentially prove to the state that he didn't have those assets. And given that it was after the assessment period, because they give you like a first letter that says, hey, this is our assessment, you can appeal the assessment. And typically at that point, you file a personal property tax return. Either you're supposed to file it sooner, or you call them and just say, hey, this is wrong, blah, blah, blah. Well, he didn't do that within that period because he says he never got the letter. And then what happened? Well, they say, hey, sorry, you got to pay the tax anyway. That's what we assessed. You didn't appeal it. And so I don't know what happened after that. You didn't tell me, but that's a thing that happens. And so you're going to be guilty until proven innocent, which is why I'm not into using transparent crypto anymore. I don't want to mess with it. I don't want to be on the grid as far as just all of this stuff is concerned. That doesn't mean I'm not going to honestly report my activity. That doesn't mean I'm not going to follow the law, but you could get construed in a mess if you have incompetent people looking into your situation and have that authority and have that power over you. They can charge you these tax bills, and then you may have to waste time and money to fight these tax bills to straighten them out the right way and fix these people's problem. Or you can't fix it, and they're on a power trip, and you got to pay the tax. That's a real thing, okay? So there is some good news on the tax front in regards to the $600 threshold that I talked about last video in regards to the 1099 reporting for third-party payment processors like Venmo and Cash App and PayPal. They now push that back another year, which is great. But if you want to qualify your tax deductions, it's still highly advised that you file your 1099 forms yourself if you paid over $600 in business expenses. Because if you get audited, then if you didn't file those 1099s, they can actually disallow that deduction. But that's just something to point out for you guys. But the third-party payment processors are now up to that $20,000 threshold, which is going to make the lives of millions of people easier, which is great. Just wanted to balance the bad with the good a little bit. But I guess that's how I want to start this out. Is there anything else I want to say at the moment? I don't think so. I always kind of do a little bit of a vlog sesh before I go into the content. It's just a way to connect with the bros. I took my first jiu-jitsu class back today at 6 in the morning, and I'm not sure what was harder, the jiu-jitsu or waking up that early. I got to wake up earlier. It's one of those very easy things to improve your life. But it was great. If you guys do jiu-jitsu, let me know. I'm getting into it. If you've got any tips, throw them my way. I'm trying to go on the adventure and, get back into shape after studying, 4 months hardcore in the CPA pits, but still getting the license going. Oh, by the way, I'll just get into this now. Yeah, this stream is brought to you by my company, Bear Bookkeeping and Tax. I'll show you the website, but I did want to give a PSA because I have had a good number of people reach out to me for quotes and for consultations and all that. We've done some pretty good work on that. Firstly, we got verified on Monerica, which is sick. Can you guys see the screen? Just want to make sure. I think my box is too big. You don't need to see me that much. We got verified on Monerica, which is sick. So we got the green check next to the name to know that we're legit. And go ahead and put your company on here. There's seemingly hundreds of companies, which is awesome on this website. So get yours on there if you own a business. I really do think there's nothing more important than that for growing the Monero circular economy, just to get people using this stuff. And there's a great video that somebody did explaining why that's the case. Tokenomics, demand side of things. And I made a post on Twitter about the importance of demand when it comes to crypto valuations and when it comes to store of value theory, because the focus is too much on the supply instead of the demand. It takes two to tango. We'll get into that in a little bit. But if you really want to grow demand for Monero, you got to use it. And Monerica had made a post recently on Twitter saying that I think he calculated 10 companies on Monero allow for a 5% discount or up to 10% discount if you use Monero. We need to get those numbers up, fellas. I mean, it's awesome that you guys are on this website. But if you want to incentivize people to part from their lovely Monero, you're going to have to offer a little bit of cheese. You're going to have to offer a little bit of incentive for people to spend this stuff because Gresham's Law is a thing. They're not going to pay you the same dollar amount for something. Well, maybe they could because, if they got Monero in some way that they don't want to necessarily disclose or something like that, then, maybe they're just looking for whatever way to spend it. But I do believe that it's good to have an incentive because, if people are going to spend with dollars in Monero, in most cases they're going to spend with dollars if there's not a financial incentive to spend with the Monero because they're going to want to keep the Monero because the Monero is awesome. Just my 2 cents on that, unless you offer a service which uniquely requires Monero, but that's, I think, another part of the internet, not necessarily Monerica, but you can get a 5% discount on bearer bookkeeping and tax services. Again, we do some bookkeeping right now, and this is what I wanted to get to. PSA for the bros. There is no tax filing until February. Okay. So the e-file is down. It goes down at the end of every year, typically mid to late November to late January. So if you didn't do your tax filing, if you need to catch up on tax filing, that's just something that you have to wait out. I've got this kind of transitory thing going on with my business with the CPA license and all that. So the only thing I'm doing right now is bookkeeping. Okay, so if you want bookkeeping services, hit me up. If you need business consultation regarding like how to set up your business and maybe certain advisory things like that, hit me up. Tax advice is something that I'm kind of holding back on a little bit if it requires a lot of technical expertise. I had a guy hit me up recently. I'm not going to go into his situation, but it was regarding certain tax matters that could be a little bit complicated. I'm not going to get into it, but that kind of thing, I'm not going to give any kind of official statements on. We could have a conversation about it. I could maybe give you some insights, but it's not going to be actual tax advice because I'm in this kind of transition with my company, and I want to make sure everything is set before I start giving that kind of professional service. Okay, so right now we're just doing bookkeeping because I do that fairly well and I know what I'm doing. We can get you set up with that. Tax filing February, same thing probably with the consultations, unless it's like QuickBooks online training or like some personal finance stuff or entity formation, that kind of thing. Pretty straightforward stuff. Okay, and by the way, I don't do the actual entity formation for people unless it's involving an S corp filing. If you need to file 2553 to get yourself that S corp tax status, which may not apply to a lot of you guys, but especially if you're starting out. But when it comes to LLC formation, and especially when it comes to partnerships or corporations, I don't actually do that. That's something that you want to either do yourself or hire a lawyer to do. And I had another guy reach out to me, and he's talking about setting up an LLC in the United States and then, incorporating offshore and setting up like this weird tax shelter thing. And it's like, look, bro, that's something you got to get with the lawyer about. Once you figure that out, get back to me. By the way, I'd be curious about how that works out. But just note out for all of you who want to do that kind of risky thing, the IRS looks out for stuff like that, and so does FineSim. And you may have to file some extra reports that you don't know about. Just make sure you sit down, ideally with a tax lawyer, if you're getting involved with setting up one of these anonymous LLCs in Wyoming, and then doing some kind of offshore incorporation so that you could get into one of these low tax countries and do business out of there and all that, because there may be certain tax laws you don't know about, and the IRS has been aware of a lot of this stuff for a long time, and they've implemented a lot of laws that kind of close off any benefit that you could get from that. And if you figure something out, let me know. I'd be curious, but I mean, it's one of those things we learn in CPA school that, hey, the IRS looks pretty close at this kind of thing, and if you don't do it right, there could be steep consequences. Okay, so find a lawyer for that. So those are just a few things off the bat. This is the $600 update, which is a big win. So they're pushing it off to 24. Awesome. So is there anything else I want to say to start this off? I think that's that. God bless you guys. Hope you're awesome. And by the way, there is somebody who reached out to me who converted to Orthodoxy. Awesome. God bless you, dude. Me getting the word out about that, probably more important than anything I could talk about here on the channel. And I believe it was you and your family, so may God grant you many years, brother. Glory to God for that conversion. Awesome. Okay, so let's get into the content. So our bro Stoic XMR, who wrote the Monero Standard, which is a book, and he's also got a YouTube channel. And bro, I need to reach out to you. We need to have a convo. It's December. It's a pretty slow month for me, but you know, I'll try to make that initiative. Typically, when I get into like Monero zone, it's like sudden, and I always forget to reach out to people. So apologize about that. But he has been doing a like a speaking tour. He's getting there and he's talking about Monero on stage to bros, which is something you love to see in Australia, which is a pretty authoritarian country. So to see that, you know, somebody's getting out there in front of crowds talking about Monero. Awesome job, dude. And then this Alexander dude, he's got some pretty good takes. So give him a follow. Alexander Schmidt. Pretty smart guy. He's got some good memes. By the way, if I seem sick, I was around my niece for Thanksgiving, which is lovely. I mean, she's just a great, beautiful ball of awesomeness. But, you know, she's also a walking Wuhan laboratory, as most 2-year-olds are. They pick up whatever they catch from anywhere, and then, you know, just be ready for the, for the infection to come. But yeah, so I'm a little bit stuffy. But yeah, he posted this meme, still no inflation bug found Monero, and he posted this link. And I've seen it around, but I haven't actually checked it out. And basically, it's this one-page website that shows how long we've been without an inflation bug. Okay, which is pretty sweet. And I know the whole inflation bug thing, it's just something that we're never going to hear the end of as long as we're into this project. So you could show them this. You could reason with them about, you know, a number of different things, how the audit supply issue isn't what you actually think it is, etc. But, you know, we talked about that in other videos. I'm not going to go too much into it. But that's a cool website if you ever want to show bros. Untraceable, he says, while Bitcoin can appreciate while sitting idle in hodlers' wallets due to high levels of speculation, Monero gains value with usage. Right, and we've talked about this before where with Monero, you actually have a price floor type of situation because you have that inelastic demand. And it's such a key concept people need to understand, this inelastic demand concept, which comes from something which has unique use case. If something has a unique use case and that use case is valuable, then that means that people are going to, like, no matter the supply, and, you know, the rate of increase in the supply is important for tokenomic valuations and that kind of thing. But, you know, that means that people are going to continue to buy this because they're continuing to use it. And so that'll create a certain price floor. And there isn't a lot of speculation in Monero relative to a lot of other currencies because it's not listed on a lot of centralized exchanges. In fact, there was a crackdown in Europe recently on centralized exchanges. South Korea, they've had Monero banned from centralized exchanges for years. And, you know, that crackdown is probably going to continue across the world. You know, Coinbase notoriously hasn't had Monero listed on their exchange, I don't think ever. And so, you know, it doesn't have a lot of crazy speculators because to get into this thing takes a couple extra steps, and that deters a lot of the moon boys who are otherwise kind of lazy and just want to pop in on the newest thing. So it has a pretty good, in that case, if you want to call it a store of value, which I try to avoid when talking about crypto. And I have a tweet thread that I want to read to you guys coming up that I made about the whole store of value thing, because it really is important. But this guy, he made a great video talking about demand-side tokenomics. It's a 1-minute video, but it's totally worth a listen because he just nails the nail on the head. Like, it's just excellent. Listen to this.
Important because you want to figure out what the value capture is important, and looking at mechanisms is important because you want to figure out what the price floor of a token is. You want to find and generate the minimum possible price for a token based on its use in a protocol. So, for example, Monero processes, let's say, $10 billion a year on the dark web. It's something like that. We don't know if Monero is anonymous or private by default, but the idea is a currency has to be worth at least as much as all of the things that it pays for divided by the number of times each unit of currency is used. So if each unit of Monero is used 10 times and it's processing $10 billion, then the price floor of all Monero in total is $1 billion divided by those Monero that are used, the circulating supply. So this is called the equation of exchange. You can look it up. It'll be interesting to all of you later. This was first formed by John Stuart Mill, popularized by Milton Friedman, and is a great way to value a currency.
Just excellent. Just hit the nail on the head. He didn't even stop one bit. He was just like, yeah, this is the fact. This is why you have a price floor in Monero. And he got into some theoretical economic stuff I've never even touched on. So that's really cool. I learned something there. But as he says in his tweets, tokens get some of their price from speculation, but they get their value from their use. And that's exactly right. That's what we're about here, trying to find valuable cryptos, which have use cases, because the demand side is important. And so I wanted to read my thread because I put a good bit of thought into this, and I feel like I laid it out succinctly. So I'll just quickly go through this. And there's one retort to this somewhere in here from Zardy, bro. He's a Pirate Chain guy. He's a cool guy, though. We've debated back and forth about store of value, and it's like somewhere in the tweets. It's not at the bottom, and I was going to respond to it, but I don't see it. But bro, we've had this debate forever. At some point, we just got to call it. But I said the demand part of the store of value debate is often left out. The focus is primarily on the supply element, fixed caps. So with Bitcoin, the 21 million cap, tail emission, which Monero has, which some people have a problem with because it introduces Monero into the supply, which people think is like somehow stealing. But you have to remember, at least in context, that Monero is going to be increasing the supply at a slower rate than Bitcoin, actually, or at least it's going to have fewer Monero out there than Bitcoin. I forgot what the statistic was. It's been 2 years since I looked at it, but Bitcoin still has inflation. All these other cryptos still have inflation. They do have a fixed cap. Monero has hit its ultimate subsidy cap. Now it has that tail emission that's kicked in. I think that kicked in about a year ago, but it will continue to have that forever. And so people don't like that. They think it needs to have a fixed cap. Again, they're too focused on the supply element. And then some people even argue against gold because, you read these news stories that pop out where they found a whole bunch of gold in some African country. And this means the price of gold's going to go down and like terrible store of value because they found some gold, blah, blah, blah. And, they had this whole thing in the 1700s where the New World was discovered. Well, I guess it would have been the 1600s, maybe the 1400s. I can't quite remember. But this had a great impact on the Spanish Empire because when they were discovering the New World, maybe it's the 1500s, they had brought a lot of new gold back from the New World. And so when the new gold came back from the New World, obviously that greatly increased the supply of gold and caused a deflationary issue because you had so much more currency come into the money supply. And because everybody was, having more gold, the value of the goods against the gold, I believe became less, right? If you have more gold, more supply. Maybe it would have been inflationary in that case. Yeah, I guess it would have been inflationary because you have a lot more gold coming to the system. Yeah, that's the point. So, yeah, it was going to be inflationary, and then it caused all these problems. But notice it was still a store of value for 500 years after that. Now, some people will say, well, it's because you didn't really have any other options. You didn't have Bitcoin at that point. Yeah, but gold is still a store of value today. Yeah, and a lot of people don't see Bitcoin as a store of value, and we've talked about that forever. So, but if your store of value asset doesn't have a unique value proposition that creates inelastic demand, then supply becomes much less relevant. I'm continuing my thread. A limited supply of something that nobody finds actually useful will typically tend towards zero. All right, so if you have like a bucket of dung in your backyard, okay, it may be the only bucket of dung for 100 miles. And I know like visions of fertilizer that come to people's head, just bear with me. If that has no use case whatsoever, or at least relative to what other things could provide, it doesn't matter if you have that limited amount of dung okay, it's going to trend towards zero. And there are some things, of course, where rarity is a factor and its value just for that rarity. But the presumption with crypto is that it's valued for its use case that it provides. That doesn't necessarily mean that people are going to collect digital ones and zeros because it's rare. And people try the whole NFT thing, and that didn't turn out too well. I think the average NFT is down like 99%. I mean, I'm glad we never touched that. But moving on, as far as crypto is concerned, Monero is a much better store of value than Bitcoin and every other crypto, in my opinion, even considering tail emission, because it has a unique value proposition and an actual use case that creates some level of inelastic demand. While it's possible for other private cryptos to come along and pull demand away from Monero, it's fairly unlikely over a moderate period of time due to the nature of trusted privacy tools. Regarding privacy, it's not typically worth risking a change to something unless the marginal benefit is between the information being compromised or not. Monero will remain dominant as a trusted peer-to-peer private digital cash, securing inelastic demand and a level of store value. So when we see Monero continue to become the sole crypto used on dark web marketplaces, for instance, that means if you want to use that marketplace and you want to get whatever weird goodies you want to get, you're going to have to use Monero. And that's important because, again, that creates that inelastic demand, that creates that unique use case, and that creates a price floor and some level of store of value. And given that Bitcoin is being replaced by Monero increasingly on the dark web marketplaces, that actually puts Bitcoin at threat for the store of value proposition. Because, again, if the demand side is declining, which is evidently happening with Bitcoin, especially with everything we're reading about the Lightning Network and the transaction fees going up with the ordinals, that puts the store of value case at threat. It's not just about the supply side. It's about the demand side as well. And so moving on. Oh, what happened? Regarding Bitcoin, because the project has fallen back on store of value as its primary value proposition and has effectively dropped out of the race in being the best digital cash medium exchange, it has to formulate a strategy for securing this inelastic demand. There are two methods that are currently operating and will intensify. One is appealing to an instinct of religious orthodoxy, which I believe is natural in all people. I believe we have a natural inclination towards worship for something higher than us. And I said effective to secularists in particular, right? So with atheists and secularists, they naturally look for that godlike entity to fill that hole where God is supposed to be. So one, it's often the state. Secularists and atheists are typically leftists or typically big state proponents. They're typically communists. And then you have Bitcoin and crypto, which comes along, where a lot of secularists are filling their hole with that. And then you have this digital golden calf type phenomenon, and that creates inelastic demand because people aren't looking at the use case logically at that point. They're looking at what this is in regards to some kind of millenarian, eschatological, we're going to create this new world type thing. It becomes a paradigmatic cult in a way. And so they're getting demand from that, or they're getting at least a lack of selling. And then two, you have appealing to state mandates for privileged regulatory treatment. And we're starting to see the latter. This is why there are initiatives that Bitcoin be considered the only crypto to be defined as a commodity, while all others are defined as a security. And this is why Michael Saylor types appeal to third-party custody solutions involving the traditional banking system. And we played that clip for you guys in the last video where Saylor was talking about how Wall Street banks need to get involved as custodians, trusted custodians, and the industry needs to mature, and we need to eliminate all these crap coins, and we need to have more regulation to protect the consumer and all this stuff. And that is essentially Saylor trying to secure inelastic demand, because if you get state beneficial treatment, that means you have the easiest access for exchanges and the on-ramps. That means maybe some states will allow the payment of tax in Bitcoin as legal tender. That means that maybe there are tax benefits where if you trade in Bitcoin, maybe you don't have to pay unrealized capital gains or not capital gains tax up to a certain point because maybe you're trading in a daily transaction. In which case, and I have seen some bills proposed for that, where if you transact crypto, and they didn't specify Bitcoin, but they said crypto, if you transact, less than $100, then you don't have to figure your capital gains tax. It'd be treated as just, a use of cash. And I don't know what happened to that bill, but you're going to see favorable regulation for Bitcoin. Now, does that affect privacy coins? No, it doesn't affect privacy coins at all. Again, we have the stronger store of value use case. We don't need the state in order to secure the store of value thesis. But I actually do see a scenario where Bitcoin somehow does get favorable treatment, because if they can herd everybody into Bitcoin, and Bitcoin can become the legitimate cryptocurrency, the one that you could use and not have any problems from a legal perspective, and it starts to get adopted by the institutions, et cetera, well, then what happens at that point is your privacy will be dead. There will be no using Bitcoin privacy or privately without legal risk. And we've already started to see that with the crackdowns on the mixers, which will likely continue as we move forward. And they're going to have exchanges and other entities. And actually, Tim Pool talked about this in a recent podcast he did. What they're going to do is they're going to make it so that these stores that you go to, these people who accept Bitcoin, because maybe it does become like the legal cryptocurrency that you're allowed to use, they're going to make it so that the wallets that you can use as a store have to be registered and licensed, and it has to have this software in it that identifies Bitcoin that comes from white and black lists. Because again, Bitcoin has the fungibility problem. And because Bitcoin has the fungibility problem, you can determine where certain Bitcoins came from. Certain Bitcoins can be more, quote unquote, dirty than others. Some Bitcoin can be more high risk than others. And it doesn't even matter if you're 6 leaps away from somebody who was some Ruski hacker, bro, who had, hacked somebody. You could be implicated in something, or you could at least be at risk of being perceived as being implicated in something. And therefore, maybe you don't get the capacity to spend your Bitcoin at a store, and so your Bitcoin is worth less, and of course that creates all these problems, which one of which incentivizes more people to simply trade on exchanges, because you can trust the crypto that's coming from exchanges is clean. And that's going to incentivize more people to just have their Bitcoin held up at these Wall Street banks that, Michael Saylor was talking about before. That's going to incentivize more custodianship, which defeats the whole purpose of Bitcoin. And, forget about privacy at that point. Unrealized capital gains taxes come, or just other tax liabilities come, and then it doesn't even matter your whole Bitcoin revolution, because it's over. Maybe they are not able to print money. Maybe it actually does become some kind of, backing to the currency. Highly doubtful, but let's say it actually happens. Well, instead of getting that money through inflation, they're going to get that money through taxation. You're going to have no way to escape at that point. Not saying that you should, again, from a legalistic perspective, from a tax perspective, pay your tax, blah, blah, blah. But I'm just saying, you're going to have no escape at that point, because whatever money they can't get through inflation, they'll get through taxation. They'll get the money anyway. And it's like the same thing with people who say, well, if the government adopts Bitcoin, then, we can see what they're doing with our money. We can audit them. We can track them. I mean, we try to audit them right now. That doesn't mean anything. You can't control their spending. They fail audits all the time. They continue to get trillions of dollars. Doesn't change anything at all, because you don't have the power. But they can see everything you're doing with your money, and they can steal more of it. So that's something to think about. And we'll probably see, regardless, again, more regulatory capture in crypto. That's the direction this is going. And you see it with Lightning too. There's more third-party custodianship. That seems to be the accepted norm increasingly, because otherwise you have problems with, liquidity channels and all this. So closing out, it will be interesting to see what happens, but the best strategy for crypto, quote-unquote, investing is to figure out which cryptos you would want to use as a business owner. And it's ideal to become one and actively use it to figure that out. So that's my take on store of value for Monero and Bitcoin, summarized, and I believe that will become ever more important a factor. And this is an interesting trend. I've actually seen 3 posts recently. I have them all lined up where people are questioning why they hold Bitcoin increasingly. Like, I don't know why I hold it, but I feel like I have to hold on to it. And it's one of those things, man. See, this is why I'm able to kind of talk as objectively about this as I am able to. And that doesn't mean I'm totally objective. Because I don't have it, I probably have a bias against it. So keep that in mind. But people who do have it seem to have a pretty big bias for it. And you're increasingly seeing people question that. They're saying, I already know it's inferior to Monero. And, it's not as quick as Litecoin or Nano. And they compare it to other cryptos that they like. Ultimately, it has to be private and fungible in order to be a currency. Never forget that. I mean, I see so many Nano posts on my feed now. I don't get it. I don't know how I got all these posts getting into my feed from the Nano bros, but the problem with Nano is not private. It's as simple as that. I don't care how fast it is. It could be the speed of light. If it's not private, it don't matter. I mean, it's cool. It's cool technology. I'm not trying to put it down. I'm just saying. But it's just an interesting phenomenon. So let's look into this. Some of these posts. I don't even like Bitcoin anymore. This is from FSTNML. And by the way, did I cite the prior people? Tokenomics. That's the name of the guy who did the presentation. I think I quoted everybody else. So, FastNML, he says, I don't even like Bitcoin anymore, and I don't know why I hold it, especially when there are many other coins that have superior technology, more decentralized than 3 mining pools securing the chain. And Joel Venezuela, he says, I felt that way since 2016. Sucks to be that early sometimes. There are plenty of use cases for Bitcoin. It's from BitBabe. And most importantly, you can hold it. You can lock it onto Lightning Network or something. You can tell people about it. You can role play as a freedom activist while weeding out poor people. Yeah, that was honestly the funniest thing 2 videos ago when we were looking at people freak out over the high fees, and you started to see this cognitive dissonance come to the Bitcoin bros, like, hey, is this actually going to work? And, people were responding to them. It's like, yeah, dude, it's just, maybe it's not going to work for you because you're broke. So, it's just funny. And then the next guy, this is UTMO. And ironically, these are all people who follow me, I think. So, maybe they're seeing my posts about this. I don't know. But he says, I don't care anymore about Bitcoin. Old tech, can't scale, slow, high fees, censorable at minor level, no privacy, KYC has killed it. Pretty good summation of the of what's happening. For payments, there's nothing better than Monero. It's true. My savings are in Monero because it's a stable coin backed by an idea. It kind of is a stable coin if you look at the price. I mean, the price literally has not changed. I mean, it's gone up and down. But speaking of as of right now, the price for the most part hasn't changed in the 2.5 years I've been making these videos. In the 2.5 years I've been telling you it's going to go super hyper mega nuclear. I think it's going to happen at some point, but it is kind of funny. It is very stable. Separate money from the state. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. It's pretty sweet. You hear the Darabos chiming in. And then I made this post because one thing you're seeing more copes about is Bitcoin bros saying that Litecoin is a layer 2 of Bitcoin, Monero is a layer 2 of Bitcoin. And I said they're not layer 2s, they're just better cryptos, stop overthinking it. Well, this guy had commented, his name is L. William XMR, and he said this, and I thought it was interesting. He said, man, I want to trade my last Bitcoin for Litecoin and Monero so bad. I'm just afraid. I think about it every day. I already have a suicide stack of both. But these levels, I don't even want this clunky crap. But all these institutions might buy my bag, so I don't know what to do. See, that's the thing, dude. And I always bring this up. It's like, okay, so what if they do? How much money do you think is going to go into these things? Because you got to keep in mind the central banks, they're buying gold. They're not buying crypto. As far as we know, they're buying gold. And so how much money ultimately is going to make it into Bitcoin? Because it's already valued at $750 billion. In my opinion, you have a lot of stuff already priced in. And you really have to consider that. Now, I know some people, they want to hold on for the halving because they think that's going to be a big boost because you got, again, the supply declining. The subsidy is declining. And I get that argument from a trader perspective. But if the only reason you're in an asset is because you think someone dumber than you is going to pick it up and pay your tab, you may want to rethink your position, because that's called a Ponzi for the most part. Okay, so but that's what all these people are saying. Effectively, they're like, why do I hold Bitcoin? I mean, I'm just kind of hoping somebody else buys this for a higher price. That's effectively what everyone's saying. And so, we'll have to see what's going on with that, dude. And so this is what I responded. I said, what institutions other than the ones run by Psycho Sailor are going to volunteer to bag hold? Your position isn't uncommon, but as someone who has for a long time owned zero Bitcoin, I'll tell you it's relieving not to come up with grand hypotheticals and copes to justify the bag. And that's what a lot of people are doing. I mean, you got to really... We've heard this institutional adoption thing, by the way, for how many years now? This has been a thing for half a decade, at least, where like the institutions are going to get in, it's going to go hyper-nuclear. And look, it's not like it hasn't gone hyper-nuclear, okay? It's gone pretty big. People have made life-changing monies of Bitcoin. Don't get me wrong. But at some point, you get into a maturation phase, and it's just a risky bet. You're banking on big institutions getting into this. And I'm not saying that there isn't a bet to be made, but it's risk reward. I understand where people are coming from. I mean, the bet really is the state going to give favorable regulation to Bitcoin? That's the bet. And if I were holding Bitcoin, that's what I would hold it for. But you got to remember, whatever gains you have, you better believe you're going to pay tax on. And you better believe you're going to be on the grid, okay? Unless you're like an old timer who's just got this stuff and you're going to atomic swap it out from Monero or something. But just keep all that in mind. Just keep all that in mind. And then he says, I know it's the charts though. So he's doing chart astrology. Despite me knowing it's a horrible clunk of crap, other people buy it. So, yeah. This is the last Bitcoin, and I just don't want to kick myself. Yeah, so he's waiting for the ETF. That'll probably be a big sell the news type thing. But look, I'm not saying, and I'm not against people buying Bitcoin, dude. It's like do whatever you want. Some people, they got a lot of money, and it's like $10 transaction fee, whatever, no big deal. I don't hate on anyone using Bitcoin. For me, I think it's dumb. But people can use whatever they want. I'm just saying, from like a speculative perspective, which is what we're talking about here, which is what most Bitcoin bros for the most part do. They're hodlers. They don't really spend this stuff. They don't really use it. It's just a speculation. I don't think the risk reward makes a lot of sense. Let me know if you think I'm wrong. I'm just curious. So Monero Tony, he says, one of the most important charts from Monero. This is some good Monero news, just straight up Monero news. He says transactions historical chart. This chart is correlated to adoption and is trending up since the beginning of the year, which is great. So ever since January, it's been going up quite violently, which is great. And you did have a lot of activity and also a lot of volatility during the speculative phase in January. But it looks like real adoption is happening, which is good to see. Moving on, what else I got? It's just kind of a bunch of random news stories. Unrealized capital gains back in town. So this is sort of like the main news story. Senator Ron Wyden, this from Bloomberg Tax, introduces a bill today that aims to take aim at assets owned by the wealthiest Americans. And I told you guys 2 years ago they'd be back with this because the motion failed. Pelosi was trying for it. Yellen was trying for it. There was a real initiative to make this happen. And there was a panic on Twitter about this. They're like, there's no way they're actually, it's like, yeah, they're doing this. You better believe it, okay? But it failed. And I think it failed by a fairly low margin. But essentially, this bill would establish an annual tax, according to Chris Keofi, senior reporter at Bloomberg Tax, on asset appreciation. Like I said, it'll start with the billionaires. It'll move its way down, trust me. Because look, when Eugene and Margaret have their Social Security checks stop coming in, come like 2029, or, Jamal and Pablo need to, feed their 800 kids, and the welfare state has run dry, well, guess what? They're going to be looking for somebody's money. And they're going to have a lot more political power increasingly. This what do you call it? Demographic. Okay? And you're going to move ever more into a socialist situation. I mean, I hope in some kind of way we have some kind of just change in politics here, but I have no faith in politics at all. But look, they're going to try to get your money however they can. Now, is the unrealized capital gains tax going to apply to the younger bro out there? Is it going to apply to you and me for a while? Probably not for a while. We'll probably get away with not having to deal with that because the overhead would be insane. Like the amount you would have to pay an accountant or have to pay somebody in general to keep track of the movement of these assets and how much things appreciated, all this mark-to-market stuff, your tax return take forever to do. And there would just be a lot of overhead. Audits would take forever on the behalf of the IRS. It would be a total issue. But that doesn't mean that they wouldn't try to do it, right? So just know that the government's running out of money. There's a lot of people who need money. If you've got money in traceable cryptocurrency, it's on the grid, and they're talking about unrealized capital gains taxes, that's a risk. And the billionaires out there, or at least the people worth millions of dollars who are the next, target group, if you don't think that they're looking at these factors and they're saying, maybe we should consider an alternative vehicle for our wealth, then I don't know, I think you're on something. But I think they would look at private solutions to that, one of which would be Monero. And I think, again, once there's a start to Monero, once there's like a walk and then a running jog, I think Monero would just take off because it would become a panic. It's one of those things where the environment keeps getting hotter and hotter, and it keeps getting ever more ripe for something like Monero to just take over. And all it takes is like a spark. I mean, if privacy coins in general begin to really get traction, you're going to have a lot of people have FOMO like you can't even believe. Because privacy coins are like an insurance. It's not even just a store of value. It's beyond that. And I'm not saying they are a store of value. Again, I'm just saying they're, in the context of crypto, the best store of value you can get. Okay, so even though you can pretty much hide your money off the grid, that kind of thing. But people are going to look at this situation and be like, oh, the price of having digital money that works off the grid is going nuclear. And there's no crypto that does it like Monero right now, or at least is trusted to do it like Monero. Maybe some cryptos are better than Monero right now. Nobody knows them, or if they do, nobody really trusts them. Because privacy is, again, one of those things that you trust, and if it works, you continue to trust, and you just continue to use it. And if the price of that starts to go nuclear, that'll make a lot of people nervous. They're like, oh, man, I should really get myself a piece of this because this could become important at some point. And if other people are thinking it's important, maybe I should think it's important too. And if you've already got the infrastructure with decentralized exchanges, a circular economy, people using this stuff and understanding the use of this stuff, and a core base which has stayed with Monero for all this time, while the price has done nothing all these years and has depreciated against Bitcoin, but you still have all these hardcore people who are really smart and who get it and who are professionals and who are, tech geniuses. I mean, you're talking about an explosive situation. And that's what these continued news stories continue to foster, in my opinion. So the Billionaires' income tax bill would impose an annual levy on the appreciation of assets like stocks and bonds, and it includes rules aimed at deterring tax avoidance. And they're probably talking about minimum taxes, alternative minimum taxes. It also proposes applying a levy on harder-to-value non-tradable assets like real estate when there's a sale. So they'll probably start to mess with 1031 exchanges, I imagine. If you don't know what that is, look it up. But that's, yeah. So they want the billionaires' money. They just want more money, right? If they can't print as much money because you already have an inflationary problem, and countries around the world are already selling bonds because they're worried about the depreciation of the currency, then they're going to have to raise the money through fiscal means, which means taxes. So war on Denmark, war on cash in Denmark is hot. The government introduces a bill to lower the threshold for legal cash payments from 20,000 to 15,000, phasing out 1,000 krone notes due to police concerns in predominant crime use. This is according to the local. I also saw this on, I believe, Euronews.com, a main publication. But this is on the local in just a few dots that I wanted to point together here. They're taking out the largest denominated bill. And what's interesting about this is they first justify taking the 1,000 krone note out by saying this. They say, with the changes in Danes' payment habits, there's no longer any need for this kind of note. And in practice, it can be difficult to pay for things with it. Right, because your average cashier doesn't know math anymore, and so they have to figure math out with 1,000 bill. Like, what do I give you back? Like, why don't you just pay me in Monero? And then what they go on to say later in the article, the next sentence is, we have also listened to the concerns and preferences of the police. And the police, what do they say? Police consider the 1,000 krone note to be used more often than other denominations in relation to economic crime of various characters. And the central bank took it upon themselves to talk to the police to get their insight on this, right? The central bank wanted to know, should we take out our biggest denomination and move towards a CBDC, a fully digital currency? What do you think, police? We want to get your insight. And so they got the insight that they should get rid of it. And so that's what they're doing. So now you're only going to have, I believe, 500 and less. And the current limit to cash payments introduced in 2021 is 20,000. And that was in 2021. The government is now talking about reducing it to 15,000. So the camel's nose is under the tent. And now they're just on this campaign to phase it out, is what it looks like. So CZ Escobar got fined, and he's been busted. I can't remember if he actually got arrested. It's been a week since the story, and I already forgot everything about it. But basically, Binance got busted for a crime, according to the government. And we've made videos on price manipulation and Binance's apparent complicity in that. I think it's a pretty open and shut case, but I can't say anything for sure. But they've been, what's the word I'm looking for? They've been, according to many people's opinions, informed opinions, in my opinion, that they have been manipulating the price of Monero. They've been selling paper Monero. And we have whole videos on that. We're not going to go into it. We talked to Kevin Wyden, Body Anarchist, about that, which was a good conversation. It's pretty likely that they were engaged in suppressing the price of Monero. Now, whether they were doing it on purpose, who really knows? It could be that they were just making money doing that because they were able to just essentially inflate the supply of the stuff on their books, sell it, or allow customers to buy it. And if they didn't take it off the exchange, they could just take that Monero that some customer bought and then sell it to somebody else. And as long as people don't take it off the exchange, they could keep selling the same Monero over and over and over again. And that was their speculation. And, we had some Monero runs where people would take the Monero off the exchanges and there would be a crunch and they would shut down withdrawals from Monero, which would indicate furthermore that they were doing that. So I think it's bullish if Binance goes down. I think that'd be great. Jay Powell said they went after Binance and Kraken the same day. Yeah, and we did talk about Kraken in the last video. People need to get their atomic swap nodes running ASAP. Yeah, I totally agree, Jay Powell. Absolutely. The Fuzzstone, he says, finally a small part of the Bitcoin community is starting to realize Lightning, quote-unquote, works thing. And this guy says every single usable Lightning wallet is custodial. It's not even Lightning. You're literally asking somebody to do a transaction for you. You have an IOU. And it's a picture, and the guy who said that is Halvor with a 4. He said, he's got this picture. You want to go to the left where there's a $20 transaction fee, or do you want to use a custodial wallet? Yeah, that's the dilemma, effectively. And the Fuzzstone, he says, I use Monero whenever I can. Transactions less than 2 pennies, privacy by default, no problems with block size, and transactions hang for a couple of tens of hours. Yeah, it's pretty sweet, isn't it? It's pretty awesome, dude. And we'll, I guess, end with checking out some charts. Zano went hyper-nuclear. It kind of relaxed a little bit. It got up to $3.50. And now it's settling at around $2.70. Zarkanum's slated for this month. We'll see if they make that happen. Excited to see that roll out. And then let's see how Monero's doing. $170. Yeah, we've been at this. Look, it's just like 2 weeks, straight line. So yeah, it is kind of like a stable coin, which is cool. Lots of volume, 330,000, but not as much as we typically see. Typically, we see millions of dollars in volume on Trade Ogre, which is great. We love to see the volume. So that's what I got, fellas. A little bit of a shorter vid. We didn't go freaking 5 hours. Only the one. But, yeah, it's awesome chat with you guys, being back in the saddle. Leave comments. Let me know what you think. Zano Monero donations below if you're so kind. And God bless you guys. Stay blessed. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving, by the way. And hope you guys are prepped for Nativity. And it'll be a great December. Love you guys a long time. And Mateo, see you next time.